Hey everybody, just wanted to make a quick video today, thinking about did Jesus have a wife? This was a video that Bart Ehrman put out, interview this week on his podcast. It got me thinking about it. It also reminded me of a video that I saw with Dale Martin and Derek from Myth Vision recently. Uh, I think the issue of Jesus having a wife is something of interest, and it's obviously something that would sell some books if that's what you're interested in doing, writing about that. As we all know from uh, the Da Vinci Code and the source text, which was Holy Blood, Holy Grail, I believe is what it was called, that sort of explored this idea in very broadly speculative terms. Um, I think that Dale Martin brings a number of important points about the cultural context of first century Judaism. However, with the caveat that I believe an attitude reflected by him and also among a number of religious studies scholarship, is to quickly brush away rabbinic sources because it's inconvenient to the narrative being painted um, without much justification. The best that one can do is say rabbinic sources are late. However, that's not very accurate because the um, core of rabbinic material was published in 200 CE, a source text of probably around 600,000 words, which would have taken some time to compile, which gives us a rough date of before that time of when these materials would have been originated, if they were all composed at one time. However, the bulk of the material is difficult to compose in such a short amount of time, as one could see if you compared the work of Josephus, who also had a large volume of work. It's just difficult to use make up that kind of material, to use a popular term. So these were traditions that were reflected and amended at sometimes to reflect later periods, but these traditions go back. And you can use the New Testament text to predate rabbinic material. For example, we know that various practices later associated with rabbinic materials dated to at least the composition of the Gospel of Matthew, for example, which details rabbinic regulation around tithing of spices, which is not required by biblical law but required in rabbinic law. So that would put that section of rabbinic material to be earlier than whenever you believe Matthew was composed. More mainstream scholars would say somewhere around 80 to 90 CE. Some scholars have pushed that a little further into the second century, but in any case, you can say that the bulk of rabbinic material is contemporaneous with the gospel materials. So I think the quick um, manner in which Christian scholars brush away rabbinic material reflects more about their attitude towards rabbinic Judaism than anything that rabbinic Judaism has to say about the matter. Back to talking about Jesus, um, it is certainly unusual for someone of that period to be celibate throughout their entire life. I believe that is a justified statement to make. We do know that there were ascetic sects that had um, celibacy and abstinence as part of what they wanted from people to do. We know this from, of course, from Christian literature, from the Qumran material, in a certain sense. Although it seems that there was probably a marriage going on there, but we know that Josephus mentions the Essenes being celibate. Paul himself was celibate. Um, and we can presume perhaps that John the Baptist was celibate. So this was something that was going on, but it does seem to be something out of the ordinary. Um, and so you could say that it's likely that Jesus might have been one of these people. Um, the bulk of Jewish uh, thinking, I guess you could say, if we include the Pharisees and Sadducees, would be against celibacy. Um, the way that ancient society worked was based off building households, and that marriage was a way that you could have economic security, even if it required a bit of economic security to be able to be married. Presuming Jesus was around 30 years old, it would not be necessarily. surprising that he was not married yet, and was perhaps killed before he could secure a wife. That seems like a realistic statement to make, because it would require a certain payment to be able to be married in that culture. So that rings true to me. There is also precedent for people within the rabbinic fold to be celibate, although very rare. The most common example of this is Shimon ben Azai, who was a relatively prominent figure in the rabbinic community, even though not acquiring the title of rabbi for himself. He was supposed to have been at the Council of Yavne. Uh, Whether or not that happened in the way that it's traditionally understood is a different question, but he was a celibate figure in the rabbinic community. And as we mentioned, the other figures were there. I'm not sure that Jesus would have been married to Mary Magdalene. This seems to be a later uh, addition to the narrative that happened, probably to promote the position of Mary Magdalene within the Christian, particularly Gnostic communities. Um, but at the end of the day, we'll never really know if Jesus was married or not, or who his wife was.